seconds. I'm going to hope you're going to confirm me as the chairman. I'll tell you what, I'm going to go to that bit now. So before we start, can we ratify the appointment of myself as the chairman and my vice chairman, Councillor Hitchcock, as agreed by the full council? We just have to do it in committee. Is that okay? Right, thank you. Right, I want to welcome Councillor Henwood back to our committee. You're going to have to move because I always used to see you over there. And could you pass on our thanks to Councillor Paul Brown for the years he gave of service to us. We didn't always see eye to eye in the beginning, but he was quite a good planning member at the end of it. If you could, please. Right, so we'll go to the agenda. Notice substitutes in accordance to Council Procedure Rule 4. It's Councillor Richard Bates. Thank you. Welcome, Richard. Thank you. Item 2 is to receive apologies for absence. It's Councillor Bashir and Councillor Kennedy. Item 3, to receive declarations of interest from any member in respect to on the item on the agenda. No. And item 4 is to agree by general affirmation the minutes of the meeting we held on the 12th of March. Agreed. I will sign that and hand them to Ben in a minute. Item 5 is to consider any items that I agree to take as urgent business. I have none. So what we're here for is item 6 is the recreation ground, Deeks Lane, Anstey, West Sussex. Now, members might be a bit confused why it's turned up here after what we said in the past. If it's our land and we don't have anybody writing in against it, or then it would be delegated. But unfortunately, somebody did write in. So we're going to get a brief, very brief, what we've got here, Hamish. So to you, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So the application before the committee is full application to extend the external path and install picket fencing around the front of the community building, install drainage measures within the site, repair the maintenance track at the west of the site, install a picket fence around the existing cricket nets, regularise 2 storage containers to the north of the site, and a replacement bin store at Anstey Recreation Ground, Deeks Lane. So the application is sited within the countryside to the north of the built-up area of Anstey. To the east of the site is the A272, and to the west are residential properties, to the south are residential properties, and Deeks Lane is to the south of the site as well. Open countryside is located to the north of the site. There are significant trees and hedgerows to the north, south, east and west of the site. The northern element of the site is located within the Highwood AONB, and on the right is an annotated plan here of where the works are going to be. So you've got the community building here, you've got the track along here, and then you've got a ring of the dotted line where the proposed drainage works are. And this is the existing cricket nets where the additional picket fencing is going to be, and then down here is where the replacement bin store is going to be. So here are the elevations of the community building and the cricket nets with the picket fencing shown in orange, and there's a couple of photos there of the proposed picket fencing. It'll be 0.9 metres in height. And then the storage containers are on the left, so they're in place. And then on the right is the elevations of the replacement bin store. And so here are some photographs of the site. So top left is along the western boundary looking north. Top right is the northern elevation of the community building where the picket fencing will be. And then bottom left are the existing storage containers. Bottom right is the existing access to the recreational ground where the bin store will be. And then top left, again, is the western boundary of the site where the maintenance track is. And then top right is looking from the west to the east of the site with the cricket cricket nets in the background. And then bottom right is from the north looking south of the community building. So one third party letter of representation has been received in respect to the application. It objects to the proposal as the proposed fencing would suggest ownership of the land for the applicant that it would restrict the use of the recreation ground. The parish council have made no comment on the application, and the tree officer and council's ecologist have raised no objection subject to the proposal, subject to the imposition of conditions securing ecological mitigation measures and tree protection measures. The council's drainage engineer has also raised no objection. The issues are set out in the committee report. In summary, the development represents an enhancement of the existing recreation ground and would maintain the quality of the rural and landscape character of this part of the district. Taking into account the design, location and scale of the development, the proposal would address the character and scale of the existing site and the surrounding landscapes, and would maintain the quality of the rural and landscape character of the countryside and conserve the Highwold National Landscape. The proposal would not cause significant harm to the amenities of existing residents, and the impact on the existing trees, ecology, flood risk and drainage are also considered acceptable. Therefore, the proposal is considered to comply with policies DP12, DP16, DP24, DP26, DP37, DP38 and DP41 of the district plan, AS3, AS7 and AS8 of the Anstey Neighbourhood Plan, the Highwold A&B Management Plan, the Mid-Sussex Design Guide and the National Planning Policy Framework. It is therefore recommended that planning permission should be granted, subject to the conditions set out in Appendix A. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Hamish. Just to, about this representation, the land, as I said, is actually owned by us, not the applicant. They're just putting it, they want the picket fence around it, so that's all it is. Does anybody wish to say anything about this, or they're quite happy to, we can go to the recommendation? Kind of a proposer? And Councillor Sweatman is the seconder. Normal rules apply. Green if you agree with the recommendation, red if you don't, and yellow if you are... Yep, that's unanimous. This has been passed. Thank you. Right. You're still staying though, aren't you, Amy?
No, he's not.
He's not now?
No,
Oh,
he wasn't ever.
Oh, you're left alone now, are you? Okay. Right. Next one is in Crawley Down. It's the Stettin Works, Turners Hill Road, Crawley Down, DM 252995, and this is Joe's. Well, I hope so, because you're the only one here.
Thank you, Chairman. So planning permission is sought for the demolition of all the existing buildings on site, currently used as a garage and shed, and the replacement with 2 semi-detached dwellings and associated parking. So the application site is here outlined in red, as shown by the cursor. The land outlined in blue, just to the northeast of the site, is land also owned by the developer, where there is consent, and under construction are 5 houses currently, which utilise the existing access from Turners Hill Road. Part of the site here forms the part of the garden of Chelsea Cottage, with a single-storey detached timber outbuilding used as a garage and workshop, which is shown as this building here. Adjoining to the northeast is Stettin Works, which is the land outlined in blue that I spoke about a minute ago, where 5 dwellings are nearing completion. Chelsea Cottage, which is this property here, is a Grade 2 detached listed building fronting onto Turners Hill Road. The existing access into the site is to the northwest, with dwellings further along leading to Duke's Head roundabout. And to the southeast, you've got other dwellings as well. Turners Hill Road, and on the opposite side you have got fields. There is a pavement along Turners Hill Road which leads into Crawley Down and to the Duke's Head roundabout, and there are bus stops outside the site and on the opposite side of the road. The site lies within the countryside. So turning to the site plan, permission, like I was saying, is sought for 2 dwellings, which are shown in this position here, replacing the existing outbuilding, which is shown as the dotted purple line. These dwellings will utilise the existing access arrangement for the cul-de-sac to the rear of the site. Parking for plot 6 would be within the cul-de-sac itself to the front of that property, and the parking for plot 7 would be here to the side of the dwelling adjacent to the access. The rear gardens of the new properties would back onto Chelsea Cottage, and there'd be a 2-metre high brick wall with bleached trees on this boundary, set approximately 20 metres from the rear of Chelsea Cottage. Refuse and recycling for these two dwellings would be shared with the wider development of the site, which is within the same ownership. Like I was saying, the site is within the countryside, so paragraph 11D of the NPPF applies, where the development needs to be considered in the context of the presumption in favour of sustainable development. And this development would be providing windfall development. So this is just an existing plan showing the existing timber-clad, single-storey, very large outbuilding, which is to the rear of Chelsea Cottage itself. Got some existing elevations of the proposed two dwellings. They would be of a similar design and scale to the semi-detached dwellings constructed as part of the recent development on Stetton Works. They would be 2 stories in height with pitched elements and a hipped roof. The dwellings would be constructed in brick with tile hanging to the first floor pitched elements and some timber cladding as well. And a single-storey cat slide. Just so you can see, they are to be 3-bed properties shown on the floor plans. And we've got a street scene just showing it in context with the internal cul-de-sac layout with plot 5, which has been constructed on the site. The design of the dwellings is considered to be of an appropriate design, scale and materials to those constructed within this cul-de-sac. The proposed mix of materials and pitched elements seek to provide visual interest in the design of the dwellings and also to respond to the surrounding dwellings, including that of Chelsea Cottage. It's considered these dwellings would maintain the character of the countryside in this part of the district and would be acceptable in terms of design and impact on the character and appearance of the area. In terms of sustainability, the development is to have a fabric-first approach, delivering high thermal performance, low energy lighting and water-efficient features. There'd be permeable surfacing, soft landscaping incorporated to assist in natural infiltration and surface water management. And they would also be having cycle storage for each dwelling. So we've just got some photographs of the site. So this is plot 5 to the adjoining site. This is the existing outbuilding, which is to be removed and replaced with the development. And this is showing part of the wider garden to the rear of Chelsea Cottage and the existing boundary with the development carried out at Stetton Works. This is looking towards the existing plot 5 in the wider site and the side of the existing large building. A view taken from the rear garden of Chelsea Cottage and then looking back at Chelsea Cottage, which is here, and then with a neighbouring property along there. And just a street view of the site showing the existing access, and the development would be set back within the site and to be seen in the context of the surrounding development itself. So all the main issues are set out into the report in front of members. However, there are a number of issues that I'd just like to raise with you. So as I was saying, Chelsea Cottage is a Grade 2 listed building, and the application site is in part of the garden of this listed building. The garden is already occupied by a large outbuilding, and it backs onto the former commercial site in a backland position, and there are new dwellings being constructed which are nearing completion. As set out in para 12.42, officers consider the proposal will preserve the setting and character of this listed building and complies with policy DP 34 of the district plan and the provisions of the NPPF. The proposal would utilise the existing access onto Turners Hill Road and provide 2 parking spaces for each dwelling. There's a bus stop outside of and opposite the site, which offers an alternative to the private vehicle and allows access to the wider area and facilities. The Highways Authority has raised no objection and does not consider the proposal would have an unacceptable impact on highway safety or to the operation of the highway network. In terms of residential amenity, this is set out in detail from paragraph 12.52 of the report. The dwellings would have a back-to-back relationship with Chelsea Cottage of some 27 metres set between the rear elevations of each dwelling. Between the dwellings would be rear gardens with a 2-metre high brick wall and pleach trees on the boundaries with the existing neighbour. It's considered that such a back-to-back distance is acceptable in terms of privacy. Due to the positioning of the proposed dwellings, there would be no significant impact to the amenities of other surrounding occupiers. Overall, the proposal would provide windfall development of 2 additional dwellings that would contribute to the council's much-needed housing land supply and make effective use of land. Officers consider the proposal does not lead to any adverse effects that would significantly or demonstrably outweigh the benefits. For the reasons set out in the report and with the presentation, the application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Joe. We have no speakers, but members may have seen in the consultees, recommend, people speaking and stuff like that. Southern Water have asked for they be notified, and in the informative after the conditions, there is an informative that they have to be informed when the demolition comes along. I say no speakers. I should go to the Ward Council unless he doesn't wish to speak.
All I want to say is I think it's an extremely good, it's an extremely good use of the land. The land is already being developed along those lines. The cottage does worry me a little bit, but it's used to having a frontage onto the main road and a garage workshop at its back door. I think the noise elements will be less with this environment, and so I'm happy to go with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Bates.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. My curiosity is, I don't know if we can go back to the existing layout, site layout. I might have missed something here.
That one.
I can't see anything.
It's not come up. Here it is.
Yeah, okay, so it's exactly before and after. I was just curious why there's that large blank bit of site there with, it's not got anything on it, it's used, and I wondered how one might ever access that. I mean, in the future, when you show a hammerhead there on this particular proposal, as if they're going to come through on that particular site that we're looking at and get into further land. It's just a curiosity of mine.
Councillor, if he knows what that building is. I take it it's the bit which. That building
Yeah,
there.
yes,
That's the 4-bay garage workshop. That's the 4-bay garage workshop.
I couldn't see, yeah, but I can't see how people would access onto that vacant land behind, that's all.
The officer's going to answer that question.
Thank you, Chairman. So this grey area of land that you were talking about, which is the workshop building, that's been demolished and replaced with this housing development already to the back of the site.
Okay. Well,
So it's not going to preclude anyone being able to access anything.
I sort of assumed that we'd have seen that on there, that was all.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cherry.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Yes, just a couple of questions on the proposed brick wall, which is going to be dividing the cottage garden from the gardens of the new development. I wonder if you could elaborate on exactly what are pleached trees. It's not... Well, I would like escalier. Yeah. Right. Right. Very expensive. And also, I know from my own bitter experience with gardening, it can be very difficult to get plants to flourish right by brick walls because you've got the footings of the brick walls underneath. So, yeah, they've probably got much smaller root systems. So, yeah, I can picture that. Who is going to be responsible for looking after these trees once the houses are built? Because obviously, you know, with any new trees, they need a lot of looking after, additional watering, particularly with dry summers and things. So could you confirm that, please?
Thank you, Chairman. So condition 9 requires hard and soft landscaping, but if there's to be pleached trees into the rear gardens of properties, it would be down to the owners of those properties to maintain them, but the landscaping scheme requires them to be maintained for 5 years, and if they die, they have to be replaced within those 5 years.
By the resident? By the residents?
It would have to be replaced somehow, whether it be the resident or the management company within the site. That would become a private matter.
Thank you for clarification.
Councillor Henwood.
Thank you. A question on 12.78. I can't figure out how there will be a 14.44% net gain when we're getting rid of a garden and a grassland. How do you go about to increase the net gain when you're destroying and putting in concrete and tarmac and other things? This is always perplexes me.
It's a big building they're knocking down. It's a big building they're knocking down.
Big building they're knocking down. And so in place of the big building, they're putting,
It'll be gardens.
Houses.
And
anyway, I will leave that for a question which perplexes me constantly. But I also have a query because on page 28, first of all, on page 11, 2.8 says, on this proposal, they will be using renewable sources of energy. That's 2.8. Now, when I look on page 28, 12.85, there is absolutely nothing about renewable energy. So I just don't want us to be misled in descriptions. 12.85, there's nothing about renewable energy resources. So it's kind of, I find it misleading if on page 11, 2.8, it says they will be using renewable sources of energy.
yeah, do you want to go back?
Thank you. So, yes, 2.8 says the proposed development is of a sustainable design and construction seeking to minimise energy and using renewable sources of energy. This would be down to its design materials and scale. So 12.85 sets out about the sustainable design and construction measures, which is a fabric-first approach through the materials which will be used, high thermal performance, low energy lighting, water-efficient measures, permeable surfacing, soft landscaping, natural infiltration, surface water management. So it doesn't mean that you have to put in air source heat pumps or solar panels. It's just the types of measures that you are going to be doing to make it sustainable.
I appreciate that, but I think nomenclature, renewable energy really means air source heat pumps or photovoltaics. I just felt like perhaps there should be a bit of more concern about using that in describing an application. Is that not common?
Across
Chairman?
across the road, unless I've got it horribly wrong, I'm looking at the two ward councillors, the exception site, they don't have heat source pumps there, and but they've got an incredibly low usage of electricity and heating, and we're talking in the hundreds, as most of us poor people have to pay thousands.
So, Chairman, my argument is the usage of the term renewable energy. Basically, I feel like it's misleading in a description of an application. All right.
Okay, yeah, okay, we'd note that. We'll note that. The officer's going to take that on board and perhaps not use that type of word in future. Okay. Right. Nobody else wishes to speak. I'm going to go to all councillors to propose this.
Yes, I'll propose this, yes.
And the seconder, anybody quick? Yeah, you're slow. Councillor Sweatman again. So we've got a proposer and a seconder, and as before, green if you like it, red if you don't, and yellow if you're going to. Yep, that's unanimously. Oh, 11? Yeah, got 11. Yeah. Yeah, have 11. That's unanimous. Thank you. That has been approved. Okay, now we're going to go to item 8, and that's DM 253191, land to the south of Burley Lane, Crawley Down, West Sussex. And this is yours again, Jo.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to draw members' attention to the update sheet, there's 2 additional conditions that have been recommended. As the site is a self and custom build proposal, it's being required a design code and plot passport is provided for each site to ensure that an agreed design and types of materials can be put forward as part of the scheme before any reserved matters, and also details of landscaping, because not all parts of the site would be in control of a private owner. There would be access roads which would have landscaping around it as well, and so we just want to have details of that. And there's a slight update in the plans that are being referred to in the consideration of the application, because it is an outline scheme with all matters reserved except for access, just to make sure it is clear what plans are being looked at.
Thank you.
So turning to the application itself, like I was saying, this is an outline application with all matters reserved except for access for the erection of 8 self or custom build dwellings with drainage and ancillary works from Burley Lane. So the application site is shown here, outlined in red. It is located to the south of Burley Lane in Crawley Down. It comprises of an open field on relatively flat ground, and the perimeter of the site is defined by mature vegetation comprising of a mix of hedgerows and tree planting. It is currently, this land is accessed off of a drive from Sandhill Lane, but this application seeks to have a revised access into the site itself, which I'll show you in a bit. So the application site is bounded by Burley Lane here, shown on the cursor, which is to the north. There is a dwelling to the east here of hedgerows, a treed belt defining the southern boundary, beyond which is pasture land and a sand school. There's also pasture land to the west before you get to Sandhill Lane. Burley Cottage here, shown on my cursor, is to the northwest and is a Grade 2 listed building. Burley Lane itself is a public right-of-way, and to the north of the site, as shown on these dotted blocks, there is, it's currently a field with vacant buildings, but there is a resolution for the approval of 48 dwellings with pedestrian links onto Burley Lane. It is an allocated site. Further along Burley Lane here, there is currently a pedestrian link onto Burley Lane, which leads onto a housing development further to the north. Whilst the site lies within the countryside, the built-up area boundary is on the opposite side of the lane here, as shown here. So just to show you the proposed site plan, this layout is indicative, as is this cul-de-sac arrangement. Like I was saying, this is an outline scheme where we are only looking at the means of access into the site. So the means of access is shown here on my cursor. This is the fixed element that we are looking at, and it is to be taken from Burley Lane, and the rest of this site would be subject to a reserved matters. The access would be from the northwestern corner of the application site directly onto Burley Lane, and this has been positioned to limit the impact on the existing tree belt, and shown hatched would be a Grade C group of trees to be removed just to create the access point. Again, like before, the application site lies within the countryside, and paragraph 11D of the NPPF applies, where the development needs to be considered in the context of the presumption in favour of sustainable development. So just to show you some photographs of the site, this is Burley Lane looking down the site. This is the existing access, which would not be subject of this application. We'd be creating, this application would be creating a new access roughly here, and on this side would be the development that has got a resolution to approve. These are just views looking up and down Burley Lane, just showing the verdant character of the lane. Views within the site itself, this is looking back towards Burley Lane. This is looking to the east, as you can see, a dense tree belt, and this is looking to the south, yet again, a dense tree belt of the site. So the main issues and details are set out in the officer's report, but I will just highlight a few issues for you. So the proposal is to provide 8 self or custom build dwellings, and the council has a duty under the Self and Custom Build Act to grant suitable development permissions in respect of enough service plots of land to meet the demand for self and custom build housing in the district. Policy DP 30 of the district plan relates to housing mix and requires development to meet the current and future needs of different groups in the community, including the provision of service to self-build plots. A recent appeal decision from April this year within the district found that the council is not meeting its statutory requirements in relation to providing sufficient self and custom build plots. Whilst the site lies within the countryside, it is considered to be well related to the development boundary of Crawley Down, which is just directly on the opposite side of the lane here. And it is considered to be in a sustainable location close to the village centre, where there are footpath links on the opposite side of the lane into housing developments. The site is within walking and cycling distance of the centre of the village, where there are bus stops. The Highways Authority has considered the proposal and raised no objection. They consider the access is suitable for the scale of the proposed scheme and the low-speed nature of the access road and in a rural setting. The Highway Authority do not consider that the proposal would have an unacceptable impact on highway safety or result in severe cumulative impacts on the operation of the highway network. In terms of the impact on the character of the area, this is set out from 12.31 of the report. It's clear that with any greenfield development that there will be a significant change at a local level from that of an undeveloped landscape to housing. In order to meet the housing needs of the district, there will inevitably be a need to develop a greenfield sites across the district. And in this instance, it's considered the harm would be localised and would be seen in the context of the development on the opposite side of the lane, which is yet to be built, but has got a resolution for an approval. Whilst landscaping is a reserve matters, the verdant boundary could be maintained to soften and screen the development. In terms of the impact on the setting of Burley Cottage, this is set some 63 metres from the property on the opposite side of the lane. It's set further away from that of the housing site adjacent to the cottage. Under para 215 of the MPPF, it's considered the public benefits of the provision of 8 self-custom build dwellings and the provision of a contribution to affordable housing, as well as the economic benefits, would outweigh the less than substantial harm to this listed building. The proposal will require infrastructure contributions, which are detailed from paragraph 12.91 of the report, and the legal agreement is progressing. In terms of the overall assessments, the planning balance and conclusion is set out in section 13 of the report. The council are unable to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply, and so the tilted balance is engaged under para 11D of the MPPF. As set out in the report and presentation, it is officers' view that there are no adverse impacts which would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of this outline scheme for 8 dwellings for self and custom build. Officers are therefore recommending the application for approval, subject to the completion of a legal agreement to secure the infrastructure, affordable housing, SAM and SAN contributions, and the BNG requirements. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Jo. We do have some speakers. I'm going to call Councillor Liz Williams from Worth Parish Council, if you like. You've been here before, but if you come and sit in that corner. The thing which has changed this time, you're allowed 3 minutes as opposed to 2 minutes. That's been changed. So once you start speaking, a clock will appear, hopefully on that screen in front of me. And when you get to after 2.5 minutes, I'll say you've got 30 seconds left. Ready for you.
Thank you for letting me speak to you today. I represent Crawley Down Ward on Worth Parish Council. Until 3 days ago, I was chair of WPC's planning committee. Today, I'm speaking as a ward councillor and not on behalf of the council itself. I originally abstained on this application, but faced with a 3-3 draw, had to cast a vote. I was not aware of the poor delivery rate of self-builds in mid-Sussex and focused on the need for a 5-year housing land supply. Now I realise these 8 are unlikely to contribute even 8 units. I urge you to consider the impact of this small scheme on its neighbours. The site lies outside the built-up area boundary in Crawley Downs neighbourhood plan and has the potential to open up further development between the village and Turners Hill. The proposed 8 houses will basically double the number of homes which currently exit onto Burley Lane. It seems bizarre an application for self-build units at Gibbshaven Farm, a site with better transport links, was recommended for rejection, yet this is recommended for consent. Burley Lane and Sandhill Lane, which leads into Burley Lane, are by nature traditional Sussex. They are attractive, quiet rural lanes, privately maintained, and are no-through roads. Passing for 2 cars is difficult, and they are frequented by dock walkers heading towards the Sussex border path, East Grinstead and Turners Hill. This was recognised when vehicular exit for the recently approved scheme for 48 units to the north of Burley Lane went via Woodlands Close on the other side of the site, with landscaping required to retain Burley Lane's rural appearance. Neither Sandhill nor Burley Lanes are suitable for the traffic associated with the self-build project. The prolonged nature of self-build will cause immense disruption with no finite end to the process. Heavier vehicles are highly likely to cause damage. This is clearly detrimental to local amenity. There is also little in this application to guarantee adequate financial recompense to the Residents' Association who runs the roads. The Council's Conservation Officer objects to this application and says it is harmful to the settings and special interests of the listed Burley Cottage. This week at the Elsham Inquiry, the Planning Inspectorate has rejected Berkeley Holmes' appeal on the grounds that the benefits do not outweigh the harm to relevant heritage assets. If the Inspectorate rejects 800 plus units on these grounds, then more weight should be given to your Conservation Officer's views on these 8. It is highly unlikely these units will be completed. Why risk the disruption and potential permanent damage to this rural, tranquil setting for 8 houses that won't materialise? Please reject this application, or at the very least impose conditions limiting the time frame for the consent to 3 years from the start of works, and ensuring adequate recompense to the Residents' Association is enforced for the potential damage to the lanes.
I represent the Sandhill Lane Residents Association. You are being asked to approve a windfall site, never allocated in the district plan, outside of the predetermined settlement boundary and exploiting the current but temporary lack of 5-year housing supply. If you look carefully at the submitted site plan, it is clear that the road plan indicates a future intention to facilitate further housing expansion to the south, infilling the strategic gap towards Turners Hill. A previous application for self-built housing locally, reference DM 24-2400, was refused by this council, ostensibly because of its adverse impact on the character and visual amenity of the open countryside, amongst many other concerns in the officer's detailed report. All of those policy contraventions and harm apply to this new site. If the previous site was unacceptable to you then, the consistent application of the same planning criteria should direct you to ignore the planning officer's recommendation and refuse this application as well. Your own principal housing enabling officer acknowledged in February that there may already be an oversupply of plots based on current demand, so some of the 8 plots may never be developed at all, thus failing to contribute towards the housing supply, or plots will take far longer to sell, increasing residents' unbearable misery. Sandhill and Burley Lanes are quiet gateways to open countryside that district and neighbourhood plans claim to protect. The public footpaths that run along the middle of both lanes are enjoyed by school children, Duke of Edinburgh Award participants, dog walkers, ramblers, horse riders. You should protect their right to use public footpaths safely rather than put lives at risk due to construction traffic in lanes barely wide enough for lorries and the 100% increase in Burley Lane traffic once these houses are built. These factors are not immaterial. West Sussex Highways report incorrectly states that a 10-mile-an-hour speed restriction exists in Burley Lane. It does not, but traffic is observed at closer to 30 miles an hour on a daily basis. West Sussex have also falsely claimed that there are various passing places along the lanes. Again, these simply do not exist, except by acts of trespass and nuisance onto the driveways of private properties. Sandhill Lane is already in a very delicate state of repair, and it seems that the applicant is unwilling to voluntarily pay the full development fees tariff which our association has adopted. And as he is moving away from the area, presumably expects all remaining residents to pay for the road damage his plans will cause.
30 seconds.
If, as I fear, the considerable harm of this plan is overlooked and district plan policy is ignored, I ask you to impose a planning condition that the applicant pays our currently enforced Developers Tariff Stage 1 in full and legally binds all plot purchasers to pay the Stage 2 fees due and to make ongoing annual contributions for general repairs as all other residents do. Thank you for listening, and I implore you to reject this application.
Thank you, Mr. Billings. And now I'd like to call Nicholas Davison, please. If you'd like to come to the seat there. Once you start, the clock will start, and after 2.5 minutes, I'll say you've got 30 seconds. So press the right-hand button, please. Thank you.
Hello. I'll concentrate on 2 points: the spread of the village contrary to prevention of coalescence policy and the safety of users of the public footpaths. There must be a limit where further development is unacceptable. Otherwise, developers can build houses anywhere in mid-Sussex. The DPC established that limit as Burley Lane when it approved the 48 houses mentioned earlier on the north side. This proposal creates a new estate outside that limit. It also includes a road to the next field. If the boundary inexorably creeps outwards, the strategic gap between Crawley Down and Turners Hill will disappear. The planning officer's report lists many reasons for not permitting this application, but each is noted as insufficient to outweigh the need to meet the required 5-year housing stream. The cumulative effect of the drawbacks surely outweighs this one benefit. Otherwise, anybody could propose a 30-storey block of flats anywhere in your area. The same argument, presuming favour, would apply. Turning now to safety. Who is responsible for safety on public footpaths? It seems nobody was consulted and there is no risk assessment. Burley Lane is 3 metres wide. Lorries are nearly as wide. Both it and Sandhill Lane are designated public footpaths. Burley Lane runs alongside our house and has only 4 places where people can avoid vehicles. It's heavily used by horse riders, young families, primary school outings, and large groups of Duke of Edinburgh walkers. The 10-mile-an-hour speed limit on Sandhill Lane doesn't extend to Burley Lane, and speeds there are much higher, so the estate access display may not provide adequate visibility. Over 1,500 lorries will use Sandhill Lane with its blind bends and Burley Lane to remove clay and to import everything. The clay is always wet. The lorry wheels will be wet and muddy. Both lanes will become muddy and a serious accident is inevitable. If somebody is injured and there was no risk assessment and this council hadn't contacted any authority, they will ask who is responsible. The district plan safeguards against noise. Adding 1,500 lorries thundering past our house contravenes this. The residents of Sandhill Lane own the lane and pay for its maintenance. Neither lane can withstand this additional load and they'll break up. It's unfair that our lane be abused by this estate's builders. To conclude, this estate is outside any unallocated area, urbanising the green space, and it's only being considered because the council has an inadequate housing supply. Access is through a designated...
Can you conclude in 1 sentence, please?
Well, as councillors, I ask you that you should refuse permission to this application.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to call Nigel Abbott, who's in support of this application, please. When you start, the 3 minutes will start, and after 30 seconds ago, I'll let you know 30 seconds is ready.
Chairman, members of the committee, good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to address you. I'm speaking in support of this application and welcome the officer's recommendation to grant outline planning permission for up to 8 self-built and custom-built dwellings on land south of Burley Lane, Crawley Down. I can also confirm that the applicant is prepared to enter into the requested Section 106 agreement and secure the financial contributions requested. This, in our submission, is a straightforward application for you. The council cannot demonstrate a 5-year supply of deliverable housing sites, and accordingly the tilted balance under paragraph 11D of the National Planning Policy Framework is engaged. Permission should therefore be granted unless the adverse impacts significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. Your officer has concluded that they do not, and we agree. I'd like to turn briefly to the objections that have been raised and explain why they don't amount to substantiated reasons for refusal. On highways and access, the County Highway Authority has raised no objections, subject to conditions. The access arrangements from Burley Lane have been assessed by qualified transport consultants and found to be acceptable. Concerns about Sandhill Lane are misplaced. The proposed access is from Burley Lane and not Sandhill Lane. On drainage and flood risk, the Council's own drainage officer has confirmed no objections, subject to conditions. A flood risk assessment and drainage strategy accompanied the application and demonstrates that the site can satisfactorily be drained without increasing flood risk elsewhere. On ecology, the Council's ecological consultant has raised no objections, subject to conditions. The application is supported by a preliminary ecological appraisal, bat activity surveys, dormice surveys and reptile surveys, together with a biodiversity net gain feasibility assessment demonstrating that the required 10% net gain can be achieved. On landscape and visual impacts, the comprehensive landscape and visual impact appraisal concludes that no adverse landscape or visual effects would arise. The perimeter woodland is to be retained and enhanced, and dwellings would be set back some 25 to 30 metres from Burley Lane. On heritage, the officer acknowledges less than substantial harm to the setting of Burley Cottage. However, in accordance with paragraph 214 of the NPPF, that harm must be weighed against the public benefits of the proposal. Those benefits, the delivery of housing to meet an identified shortfall, the provision of self-built plots to address the unmet demand on the register across mid-Sussex,
30 seconds.
Economic benefits during construction and sustainability measures, including air source heat pumps, clearly outweigh the limited heritage harm identified. On sustainability, the site lies immediately adjacent to the built-up area boundary and is within easy walking and cycling distance of the centre of Crawley Down. It sits directly opposite land allocated for 48 dwellings. This is not an isolated or unsustainable location. Members, the officer's report is thorough and balanced. It correctly concludes that the benefits of this scheme significantly and demonstrably outweigh any limited
Can
harm.
you finish
I
in one
respectfully
sentence,
urge you
please?
to follow the officer's recommendation and resolve to grant planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, can I just ask for clarification, because the last sorry, Councillor Gibson. For anybody watching on YouTube, Councillor Gibson is the local ward councillor, the other ward councillor, the other one sitting next to me. He is not subjected to any time, but he does know that he will not test our patience. Thank you, Councillor Gibson.
What I want to ask the committee to do is to consider whether or not the unsustainable nature of this site can be mitigated by our lack of a 5-year housing land supply and the fact that this is a self-build that is being offered within it, because that seems to me to be the key issues within this, and they are covered by the officer to some extent. We have mentioned the Gibbshaven Farm application, which was 242400, which dates back to April 2025, was approved on appeal. That was refused on delegated authority, and it was a very clear refusal it was delegated because it was refused because there's no demonstrable need for custom build housing which would outweigh the harm with regards to the location of the site within a countryside location. So the first thing that I want you to think about is that this is I assume, I don't know whether you are familiar with the Gibbshaven Farm location, but it's on the fringes, it's outside the built-up area boundary of Felbridge, and it was refused some years ago as a site for a rural exception for 30 dwellings on exactly the same basis, plus a little bit of coalescence with Furness Wood, and coalescence is also, as we heard, important. So here we have a very clear directive only 18 months ago, which we could say that the need for self-build, custom build, did not outweigh the harm of a site which is greenfield. The inspector, of course, took a contrary view. He said that the main issues were the effect on the character and appearance of the area, including loss of trees and the demand for the supply of self-build and custom housing. He went on, there was, and I think it's important what are the numbers on the register, because we do keep a register of self-build applications. In April of 2025, it was 23, and that was down to 16 by the time we got to the appeal in March of this year. And I just want to query exactly what, there was some cleaning of the register that was done. To be on the register, you have to pay an annual fee. And for example, Worth Parish Council paid that fee for some years in the hope of gaining a site where it could do some self-build, or indeed to provide social housing for the local community, and it withdrew it. But the point I would make at that was that Worth Parish Council, as one applicant, was looking for a number of sites. So I'm not entirely sure that the register is a quantified list of exactly how many sites there are, or indeed where they are, which I would suggest when in self-build is clearly very relevant. The inspector approved it because he said insufficient permissions have been granted by the council. And it was interesting that he talked about permissions rather than need, and I'm not sure that he was actually reflecting the MPPF, because the MPPF does talk about need. I submitted a section about the difficulties of the Burley Woods development, and you've heard about that and the access arrangements, and indeed I will, it's best I steer clear about my thoughts on the access arrangements, but as the councillor for that area, I would much have preferred a 200-home strategic development which looked at all the issues, including construction traffic, because for the first 2 years that I was a district councillor, every day I received submissions from residents about the difficulties and indeed mud, pollution of the local pond and so on. So I just don't want that to happen again. But the impact there, I have to say that I've heard several times about the 48. The 48 aren't built. You can't actually judge anything for their impact on the area. And I think until that's the case, and if you were looking at it, Chairman, if you forgive me, I'll mention the Waits development, which the Waits development is going to come back, and the developer has listened to the need for a strategic development with a change of access, which does not impact adversely on the existing communities. And I think that's excellent, and I'm going to go along and say that with the Waits people there, because I think that's great. This is a problem because it's going to impact adversely on the existing residents in a way that I have seen impact of the rest of other Burley Woods developments for several years. So what we have here, right, and I'm not going to go into the details, right, of the neighbourhood plan and the way that was written, the relationship to the built-up area boundary and so on. This is an unsustainable location. It was never identified as a location in any plan. And the 2 points that make it, that mitigate against it are these points about we don't have a 5-year housing land supply. The reason we don't have a housing land supply is that our 3-year delivery record is running at 140% at the current time. We have been delivering more houses than almost anywhere in the UK, and we have therefore delivered out early. And I think that is an important thing which gets forgotten when we happily roll over and say that we haven't got a 5-year plan. And the second point is that there is sufficient uncertainty in the self-build, the demand and need for self-build in the area, then I think you can go back to the April 25 assessment that was in the delegated report and say that there is no demonstrable need for that, which will overcome the harm on this greenfield site. Thank you.
You've heard the pros and the cons, and you've heard the local ward councillor. I'm now going to go to the other ward councillor, my vice chairman, councillor Hitchcock.
Thank you, Chairman.
Respond.
Whilst the officer, whilst the officer has produced a very thorough report, I am at odds with the approach that has been taken, and I am concerned that the committee has not received certain information to put this application in its true context. I want to look at the validity of the application, and in particular, the application which has gone through two Sheilas. A Sheila, for those of you who don't know it, and I'll try and get this right, is a strategic housing and economic land availability assessment.
That's correct.
This site went through two stages of the Sheila. At stage one, the site proceeded to stage two, but with the following caveat. Safe access is unavailable or affected by severe limitations / restrictions. That was the caveat on the stage one. At stage two, the site did not proceed further, and the supporting comments stated that, and I'll say this very clearly so that it cannot be misinterpreted, transport issues should be considered from the earliest stage of plan making and development proposals. An assessment of the site has identified severe access issues that are unlikely to be mitigated. It then goes on to say, it is concluded that development at this site is unacceptable. The site is therefore considered unsuitable for development and has been excluded from future development. At this point, I would suggest that that site is no longer part of any plan-making process. So, the site is not included within the existing development plan. It's not included in the plan under inspection. It is not included in the revised list of sites published last Friday and has been excluded from further development. The site must be considered unsustainable if access is not possible. So, given that the site is excluded from future development, a decision can be made purely by relating it to the Sheila Stage 2 comments, which if applied to a tilted balance, the unsustainability of the site will outweigh all other issues. The application for access is in direct conflict with Sheila Stage 2, as it is excluded from future development on the basis of the access problems. I cannot therefore agree with para 2 of the Officer report, which finds the site sustainable. This opportunist application should be refused. I will go on to page 2. The site is outside the built-up area boundary of Crawley Down and within the green space separating Crawley Down from Turners Hill. Approving this application will, in my mind, bring further applications for development along this quiet country lane and within the same green space as this application. It is contrary to the principle of the objectives of a CD neighbourhood plan to preserve the separation between the villages. This has come about in part due to the lack of spatial awareness and planning for the individual villages and communities. That is something that this council needs to look at. The effect on Burley Cottage has, in my view, been underestimated. I need to know, as a rough estimate, what the in combination effect of the 48 north of the lane, not yet built, and the 8 south of the lane will be on Burley Cottage. Nowhere in the report is that stated. It is a key issue for me in making a decision. Has anybody considered the prolonged build-out periods of self-builds and the significant effect of traffic passing close to Burley Cottage, which is less than 10 metres from the lane, at its narrowest point of approximately 3 metres, and also the property opposite, which is Time Cottage. It is equally close to the lane and will receive the same disturbance. Sandhill and Burley Lanes are private, non-adopted roads, and they are outside the jurisdiction of West Sussex County Council highways. They are private roads, not adopted. Highways have commented on and not objected to the scheme, but have failed to comment on the element of Burley Lane to be traversed for this development. As I said, it is 3 metres wide, of unknown construction between banks with no passing places. In my view, the highways report is inadequate, and once again, I feel that it has let the officer down. There are no designated passing places anywhere on Burley Lane. They are purely ad hoc entrances to existing premises. The public rights of way, footpaths on Sandhill Lane and Burley Lane form part of the Sussex border path and give access to superb walking country. They are extensively used by locals and non-local walking groups. The definitive county map and the IMAP, which is produced from it, IMAP is a footpath map for the whole of the county, show that these public rights of ways are footpath access only. From our point of view, from my point of view, this is at variance with the report. This development will harm the countryside to the east and south of Burley Lane, and once again, along this southerly aspect of the village, will negatively impact the lane and its views for those using it for leisure. The affordable housing commuted sum of £303,000 to be paid up front prior to development commencing will add just under £38,000 to each build cost. Who is going to pay this? This sum is only returned when all 8 are built and completed, and therefore must be banked by the council and not spent by the council. It may look good on the balance sheet, but it adds no value whatsoever, from my point of view, to the tilted balance. I will not make any comments on benefits to the shops in the village. They are minor, other than to say that with an upfront cost of 38k, the cost of the service plot and the cost of building out the plot, it is unlikely that the plot owners will be able to afford a sandwich, let alone a coffee. The viability of this site must be marginal, and in my view, there is little chance of the site starting or one house being completed within the life of this council. I would therefore suggest that this project offers nothing to the housing stock and nothing to the tilted balance. When these items are removed, the tilted balance changes in favour of refusal, taking into account the statement that I made at the beginning of this particular diatribe, if you wish to call it that, that the development has been excluded from future development, unsuitable for development, and has been excluded from future development. I would suggest that we throw this out. Thank you, Chairman.
It's pretty definitive. Does anybody else wish to speak? Because I actually, after my talk through with the officers yesterday, I thought, oh, hang on a second, I better go and visit this one again. It is a very, very narrow road. There are no passing spaces. I was one of those trespassers and exploiting, unfortunately, because I did meet somebody coming, so I had to go into somebody's driveway to let them come through. But if it hadn't been there, it was a long way to reverse. Self-builds they work very well if they're closer to built-up areas. In the countryside, going down that very, very narrow road, I wouldn't want to meet a grab lorry coming the other way. And so I do have reservations, but I'm here to guide and listen. I've now got Councillor de Bell.
Thank you very much. Do I have to press the
Touch
button again?
it.
I've forgotten. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that I've been very interested, obviously, with all the statements that have been made. And very often, things that come before us are, can we, but also sometimes, should we? Now, I believe the officer has made some very good decisions regarding can we, but I think that there's been an awful lot of very, very valuable emotional statements that have been made about should we, and including our good companion there as well. And unfortunately, I think so many times these come before us from all sorts of different villages, and the question is always, must we, in my opinion? And unfortunately, what very often happens is, if it doesn't get through this time, there will be an appeal, it'll come back again, and eventually it will go through, which is a tragedy in many cases. We have the same sort of things happen in East Grinstead all the time, and everywhere across our district. So I think that is, the cases that have been made have been very, very useful to us, and I think that we're going to be, as I say, if very often if we don't do something this time, it'll just keep coming back until such time as it does, because it's an opportunity that they don't want to miss. But I think that on this occasion, I think there's some very good points have been made about whether we should or whether we shouldn't. So I shall leave my decision until the point's made. Thank you.
Councillor Bates.
You wouldn't believe it, Mr. Chairman, but I can mention cycling.
You can.
Because
I would be very disappointed if you didn't.
3 metre width is sort of the standard size of a cycle lane. So you can understand why you had to pull over.
It wasn't a bike coming towards me, believe me.
Well, you should have been on your bike. But anyway, yeah, I made a few points here. I mean, I like the idea of self-build. This is the wrong site development. So I would support a refusal. Basically, these are not affordable homes at this sort of standard that they're showing. I like the idea that's been mentioned about the Waits development, incorporating that within a bigger development, which I visited and dealt with that particular planning application. So I'm sort of looking at it from that perspective. I think also that the council need to try and bring forward a report that shows the level of self-builds that we need to provide and identify the sites. Now, most of them, unfortunately, we're probably building a lot more self-builds in this district which don't count to our numbers. And those are at infill sites. And that's the sort of thing traditionally you would see as a self-build.
Correct.
So I think we need to have a paper on this to try and deal with requirement, but this is not really the best site to be looking at.
Yep. Could you switch your mic?
Oh, sorry.
Finish. Councillor Henwood. Don't touch
Yes.
it. You're speaking. You're live.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate the amount of evidence and facts which we have been presented with today, and it appears to me as though there are several issues that we can consider. One, when we talk about transport, and obviously one adherence to transport is the scheme protects the safety of road users and pedestrians. Well, this obviously does not. Then we talk about particularly the effect on listed buildings and the cumulative effect and the nearness that you've pointed out, the cottages to the road. I think there are several issues, protection and enhancement of the countryside, and this does seem to be an unsustainable position for self-build, and the demand does not seem to be warrant such a consideration. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
I'm going to go for people who've spoken. Councillor Casella?
I'm inclined to agree with Councillor Hitchcock. As I work in my real life, I work as a mortgage broker, as you know. Funding for self-build homes at the moment is very difficult to get. And the chances of those properties either being built in the next 3 years or so are very remote. If they're not, what happens then? Are we going to get an application for 20, 30 houses on there instead? You can see that coming down the road. At the moment, this is a bit of kite flying by a developer trying to get rich quick, as far as I'm concerned. And as they don't want to make any respiration to the road repairs, etc., it's a total con job as far as I can see. Excuse the bluntness, but that's how I feel.
I wouldn't expect anything else.
You're welcome.
Now, before I go to Councillor Kenny, I'm going to ask the officer, because she's got quite a few things she wants to answer.
Thank you. Can I just make a clarification, I'm afraid, Councillor Hitchcock, about the Sheila and when it was rejected under 2C on the overall assessment. Under Appendix 4 within the District Plan Examination Library, this site, in the conclusions, it actually says this site is therefore considered unsuitable for development and has been excluded from further assessment. It's not saying it's unacceptable for development, it's just excluded from the Sheila, is what it was actually saying. The Sheila is a high-level document. It is not a material consideration. It is just, or an adopted document. It is just looking at the availability of sites for allocation. It doesn't mean that if it's not allocated, it doesn't prevent someone coming in and looking at it as a site just to develop as a windfall development. It is a very, like I said, high-level document which only looks at stuff at a strategic level, and there's very limited information provided as part of that document. All technical information comes part of a planning application such as this, where we have had then a transport assessment and a transport statement, and it is considered by our Transport Highways Authority. Sorry. I note the concerns that you were saying about the impact on the highways and it being a private lane. Obviously, we have had to consult the local highway authority because of how it goes onto the highway network. And as you have heard, they have raised no objection and consider the proposal would not have an unacceptable impact on highway safety or result in a severe cumulative impact on the operation of the highway network. It's therefore, there's no reasons to resist it on transport grounds because Para 116 of the NPPF is an extremely high bar. I appreciate the lane is narrow, but there are existing developments within that site and existing houses on that site, and vehicle movements should be at a slow speed and adhere to the private lanes speed limits. There is a condition if the application were recommended for approval concerning a construction management plan and a construction environmental management plan, which details about the types of vehicles to be used during the construction, the parking and the storage of materials, to limit and to mitigate the impact on other users of the network there. Unfortunately, we cannot put a time period on self and custom build of when it has to be constructed by because of the nature of it, but there would be, it must be started within 2 years. In terms of the self and custom build register, this register is not static and it can change with people wanting to be added to it. At the time of the initial comments of the Housing Enabling Officer back in February, there were 16 within that self and custom build register. This morning I asked him to advise me what the number was for the register as of today, and there are now 30 people on the self and custom build register, with 8 expressing an interest in the north of the district. That obviously shows that this is not static and it does change over time. You don't have to necessarily be on the register to do a self and custom build. Yes, we do have some come through as an infill development, but the point of being on the register is that if there are sites for self and custom build such as this, they would be offered to those on that register first. And if there is no interest, it then gets marketed separately and further on. Concerns have been raised about the affordability. I'm not a financial expert, I'm afraid. The government have required a request for self and custom build. They feel that it is an affordable way for people to get onto the market. Whilst plot prices may be high for self and custom build, the cost of running up services to a non-service plot are even higher, and self and custom build have to provide a serviced plot to the site. The opportunity to acquire a detached 3 or 4 bed property within Mid Sussex is a lot higher than what a self and custom build could be. So it is still considered an extremely affordable route to lower cost home ownership. I heard there were concerns about the cumulative impact to the heritage asset of Burley Cottage. I do note your point that the officer had not identified the cumulative impact, but as I had set out in my presentation, it's some 63 metres away, opposite side of the lane, at an angle. You cannot see that listed property from the site that we are considering today. And it is considered that the benefits of these houses do outweigh the less than substantial harm, because there are very limited views from that from the site towards that listed building. I covered about the protection enhancement of the countryside. Yes, we do appreciate there is some harm, but it is on the opposite side of the development boundary of Crawley Down, so it is considered a relatively sustainable and suitable site, especially when we do not have a 5-year housing land supply. I think that will cover it off at the moment, but if I need to, I will come back. Thank you.
Councillor Kenny.
Yes, just a quick comment in support of the sentiment that Councillor Hitchcock expressed. A great deal of sympathy for the officers, and I'm furious yet again about the highways report, which I think is completely inadequate. Time and again, I've faced planning developments where bland assurances that there are no requirements needed. Time and again, access is always a problem. And I think that really they are not serving us well. They both mislead officers who find it, I think, very difficult to go against the statutory authority's position. For an officer to do that makes it hard for them, and they have a great deal of sympathy. And I think that access is the issue here. Yeah. I'm very sympathetic to all of the officers' other arguments that would lead in favour, but that is the key point for me. Yeah. Absolutely. So that's what I wanted to say. We really need to try and do something else. Let's hope local government reorganisation brings us closer together and does away with this division.
Yep. Now, before I go to Vice Chairman, I just want to ask a question on that. Highways, do they consider the actual lane, or does it where it joins the public highway? Because we've heard it's a private road and it's maintained by the people who live in that road, so therefore highways really shouldn't have any jurisdiction over that road. And we've got some private roads in the village that I do, and it's actually maintained by the residents in their precept. They have to pay a sum into it, and they've got a committee which actually does all the repairs. Actually, it's a better road than the rest of the highway, to be perfectly honest. But anyway, that's another ball game. So can I ask that question? The highways comments are where this lane actually joins the public highway, is that as far as the jurisdiction of the highway? Because I drove down there yesterday after our meeting, and it's difficult. I can't see how you're going to get lorries, and particularly you're going to get the lorries that bring the cesspit stuff out.
Yes.
And that, I mean, they're heavy. You only have a misplaced steer of the wheel, and the edge of the road is broken away forever and a day. But anyway, can I just ask that question about where was the highway's jurisdiction on the highways network, please?
Their comments are in relation to the planning application, so it doesn't set a clear commentary about that. However, they do note that Burley Lane is an unadopted public right-of-way and it is an unadopted road. They are looking at the means of access in terms of the visibility displays and whether it is suitable in that and the speed restriction. I can't comment about the jurisdiction there, but they are looking at the overall impact on highway safety on the operation of the highway network.
That's not part of the network.
Okay, and can I ask, was the public rights of way officer consulted on this? Because obviously there was a public right of way down that lane. Were they consulted?
Not explicitly, however, the Highways Authority would have consulted internally with the Public Rights of Way officer because they do work together.
Yeah.
And so it would have been taken together, hence why the Highways Authority comments refer to the Public Right of Way.
Okay, thank you. My Vice Chairman again.
I just want to come back to the Sheila. I think it's important that the comments that have been made in the Sheila are not overridden. I would come back to the comment that the site is therefore considered unsuitable for development and has been excluded from future development. This high-level document, I would suggest, circulates with the exec on this organisation, and that those comments have actually been acceptable. And therefore, I think, in my mind, this decision has already been made for you in the statement which is accompanying the Sheila report. There is no decision to make. It's already been made.
Okay, thank you. Switch off here.
Yep.
Councillor Henwood, do you wish to come back?
Yeah, there are a couple of questions,
That's
just
fine,
for clarification. First of all, somewhere on page 74, it says one of the advantages would be new homes bonus. Well, it was my
That's dead.
well, that's
gone.
quoted in this report. I'm just trying to, yeah, page 74, top of advantages would be new homes bonus. I'm sorry, I'm being pedantic.
No, it's
but
still,
let's-
apparently, it is still in
Okay,
being.
and the other question I have on page 88, 12.125, the energy and sustainability statement. I can't quite understand if the applicant can assure that these 8 different people would make sure that they adhered to this statement. How would that work
It will become under the reserved matters.
for every house?
Yes,
For
every single house
self-build?
over the next 10 years.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Those were just being questions, but I feel quite strongly in supporting Councillor Hitchcock.
I have had a lot of experience with visual representative on the National Park with South Build. And we had a really big site adjacent to Petersfield. I mean, within the built-up area boundary, which is what we were saying, that's where they should be. And they wanted 88. For 5 years, not a single person came forward in 5 years, which highlights Councillor Casella. Last year, it went to market housing, and not a single South Build had been built. That's my problem I have with South Build. We are going to subject the people who live along that road ad infinitum, because we do not know when they're ever going to come. As long as the applicant puts in the services and does the entrance, He's fulfilled his part of the bargain. Then he's got to sell the plots. And if the plots aren't sold, we don't get the money for affordable housing, which is what we all wish to see. And I have a real issue with that. But I'm still in the tilted balance one way or the other game. Councillor Sweatman.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I've listened to all the comments and I question whether this is actually a suitable location, really. It's outside the built-up area boundary. It's within the countryside. I just wonder whether it's actually that is the right location for a self-build. The question is that on the self-build, that is going to take probably many years to actually build out, which in turn means constant disruption on an unadopted road, which, you know, I'm sure you confirm, is not part of the highway network. I know that lane, like you've driven up there, it's very narrow. It's a job for 2 cars to park.
We can't.
And, okay, you're going to get lorries going up there. I know Joe said it was going to be suitable lorries, but even so, they're going to carry big diggers on the back. They have to for excavation work. So I can't see that is a sustainable development, really, in regards to the access. And I think that is the main issue over a long period of time. So that does concern me. Thank you.
Perhaps I should have declared an interest with Councillor Gibson and myself. We are members of Turners Hill Parish Council. It's coming towards our part of our parish. So, yeah, I personally don't think this is, you've just confirmed, I've gone the other way now. I just don't think this is the right location for a self-build. I really don't like the idea of being in the countryside. I mean, if it was, we've got to build another 4,000 plus houses in the countryside. And everybody says, well, why can't we use brownfield sites? Because we've used most of them up. And that's the problem. There are some brownfield sites. And if those of us who are on the committee remember the battle we had for the brownfield site at the Sixth Form College here in Haywards Heath? Yeah, that was a battle and a half. It went through in the end. But brownfield sites are very, very few and far between in our district. Our district is predominantly rural. So, Councillor Cherry, you haven't spoken yet.
No, I haven't. No, on your comment about brownfield sites, of course, for the developers, they're not really a very attractive proposition because they're so jolly expensive to actually get them into the right, you know, rather than just simply digging up a field, that's quite cheap. Right, I just wanted to say to the committee that I cannot support this application at all for all the reasons that have been outlined, and particularly with what Councillor Hitchcock has said. It's a totally unsuitable site. There are tremendous safety issues. There are no guarantees at all that these 8 self-builds will ever happen, and this nice green field will be forever ruined, and it will encourage another developer to come in when these 8 for self-builds have not taken off. Yeah. No, I cannot support this at all. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. All right. Councillor Sain.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
You don't speak very often, but please, your pearls of wisdom.
I just want to make one point. So, Councillor Richard Bates, he mentioned about the cyclist. I think this is a very narrow road for any cyclist that will be cycling through that road as well. I think it hasn't been, though Councillor Hicks reported a long, very detailed report, but nothing particularly mentioned about the cyclist there who are using. So I think there is also a very concern for safety of cyclists as well. That's all. Thank you.
Well, we'll just add that to the list of the people who use the road,
Yes,
to be fair.
yes, yeah.
Right, could you switch off your... Right, I'm gathered the mood of the committee. Do you want to add anything, Councillor Wood, or do you think everything's been said?
I think everything's been said, so...
Do you want to say anything? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate and I understand and I hear what members are saying. However, like I've said before, we are in the tilted balance land, to put it bluntly, which engages, and we have to look at whether the adverse impacts significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. I appreciate what you were saying about it being within the countryside. However, like I've said before, the development boundary is extremely close. It is opposite on the other side of the lane. So I think it would be very hard to resist on the harm to the character of the countryside. It is an outline scheme. And I think there would, you know, we have considered countryside schemes similar to this, and we have said it is acceptable. It is very well enclosed. Just so you're aware, so the Gibbshaven farm appeal that Councillor Gibson referred to, and I've also referred to, that was within the countryside, well away from the development boundary, and the inspector considered that the provision of additional housing for self and custom build outweighed that harm to the countryside. That, like I said, that was further away. There's also been an appeal decision within Copthorne for 6 houses. Yet again, it was within the countryside. They didn't consider the tilted balance. However, it was within the countryside, and they considered that the benefits of 6 dwellings outweighed the harm. So, listening to you, I can't see a justifiable reason on the adverse impacts on that character of the countryside. Same with the arguments on sustainability. Like I said, the development boundary is directly on the other side of the road. There is already a footpath link further down Burley Lane, which leads into a housing development that is existing. I appreciate Burley Lane and Sandhill Lane are private roads and are slightly narrow, and you can only have one vehicle moving, and you can't have 2 cars pass. However, it is extremely close to the village of Crawley Down compared to a number of other sites that we have considered within the countryside and that we have approved. It is sustainable in terms of vehicular and pedestrian access, close to the village centre where there are bus stops, where people can walk to that bus stop. I think the report may say 500 metres away. So yet again, I think it would be very difficult to sustain that reason as a reason for refusal. And both of those reasons, especially when we do not have a 5-year housing land supply, would be very difficult to win and argue at appeal. In terms of highway safety, we have got no transport evidence to the contrary to substantiate a refusal. I appreciate that the verbal comments that are being provided, but there is no written and documented evidence that there would be a highway safety impact through the use of a new access onto the lane at the vehicle speeds and at the visibility displays that are being provided. So yet again, as we haven't got any contrary evidence to support that, I do not think we could sustain a reason for refusal. I appreciate the Sheila may be saying that. However, that is a high-level document, and as I explained, it was not considered by a highway officer. It was a policy officer who looked at the site, and it was just their view. There were no technical documents to support. There were no details to substantiate that it would be unacceptable, but it was unacceptable for an allocated site in their view. But like I had said before, it does not preclude it coming forward, and there has been transport evidence to prove and say that it would be a safe means of access into the site. Through creating that access, we are only looking at the means of access and the visibility displays for 8 dwellings. Anything beyond 8 dwellings is not for consideration. We are just looking at 8. And I think whilst it is self and custom build, and that is an added element, we have got a need, because I gave you the numbers, that the number has gone up. It is not static. there is no moratorium on development at all at the moment, and we can allow, unfortunately, development in the countryside, but it is extremely close to the built-up area boundary. I was going to say something else, but my mind's gone blank, sorry.
That's fine. I might have to take a little bit of exception. The whole of our district plan is predicated on the opinions of our planning policy team. Exactly. And they're the ones who make the decisions whether it should or shouldn't be included and go forward. Yeah. And then it gets a more expert look at it. Though, I mean, I've got, in my other parish that I represent, 1,100 units going in Slotham Parish Council area, and the planning policy team, in their judgment, say they're all a sustainable location. That's what we've got this in combination testing to see if it is or not. If this site had been so good, it would have made that long list, and it didn't make that long list. It didn't come in front of the planning policy team at all. And if you have a look at we all saw it, it's public document now, where the sites were excluded, and it didn't even make that. It wasn't a site that actually got, so it fell. So, do I have a proposer to refuse?
Mr. Chairman,
sorry,
It's quite all right, Mr. Chairman. No, I fully approve. I thought the officer made some very good key points. All I would ask is, if we choose to refuse, as in previous cases, do we have to, we have to say on what basis?
We do, but the exact wording would be put together by the officer, myself, and my vice chairman, and then it will be circulated amongst the committee. Yeah.
Sorry, can I just clarify? I unfortunately would slightly disagree. Members do need to give us a clear and explicit reason that we could defend. But because of paragraph 11D, you would need to identify when you are setting out your reasons to motion a reason for refusal, actually how that harm outweighs the benefits, and you would need to identify the weighting on the harm that you are giving to your reason for refusal.
Okay. Now, I understand that. If this had been a normal development other than self-build, you get a time where it comes in and has to be started. This can come in and we don't know if it ever will be started. And that's the bit which I'm having problems with. I can see you want to say something, Councillor Sweatman. Do you want to add anything?
Well, no, I agree with you, Chairman, but I mean, we're talking about impacts, but I think there's adverse impacts on the residents, on that lane. Yeah. And the point is, this is not like a normal building site. It's self-build, which I understand will take some time for the plots to be sold, and the built-out time is normally quite substantially longer. So it's substantially longer for the residents in Burley Lane to have adverse impacts on periodic traffic. It's not consolidated, it's over a period of time. And don't forget, there's horse riders use that lane quite frequently as well. So yeah. That's another issue where they can go. There's big, heavy trucks coming along.
Well, I've looked at what our conservation officer has said, and she has got an objection. And in the report, it does say it is quite a distance away. The site is for the house. However, it is relatively close to the road that they're going to go through. And you could have 15-ton, 20-ton grab lorries going down on a regular basis. And That's the issue, potentially. I think that should be part of our reasons if we go down that. I personally would say the adverse effect of the countryside would be impacted. The impact on the Burley Cottage, not the fact that when it's finally built, if it ever gets finally built, it's the traffic going up and down, potentially damaging the fabric of that building. And I think that's probably what Emily had in her mind when she wrote that report. The users of the road, I would like to include some of the users of the road, but I'm not sure how defensible that would actually be. But I do feel that there are two reasons that we could use, and that is and it's demonstrably, we could use that on the grounds that the effect on the countryside at that location with that type of development is unacceptable. If it was a short, sharp within a time frame, you could probably go,
Sorry, Chair, if I may come
Yeah,
back.
go on.
It's, I mean, basically in a nutshell, it seems like the harm outweighs the benefits.
Yes.
You know, taking it overall.
You've got to take in the round of all
In the
the
rounds.
comments that have been made.
Yeah.
And we've had some passionate speakers from both sides, for and against. Councillor Kenny.
Yeah, just very quickly, I don't think we should, there may be something that could be made about the effect on the property, but I think we should just go for the key issues. And there are two. It's basically, it's not a safe access, and the Highways report does not cover key issues. The second thing is that we know it's been, including this site's, the lanes included in the IMAB for the county, that is an area of high public amenity.
It is.
That the public can use. So I think we should speak to the heart of the matter. It would be affecting that amenity, and it would not be safe. And the fact that it doesn't impact the highway network is neither there. And the figures that they quote, the fact that there are no traffic statistics, no accidents, is completely irrelevant. Of course, there are not going to be accidents recorded in what is at the moment a leafy lane and a public footpath. It's irrelevant. So I don't want to be too aggressive in attacking the Highways report. I would say the Highways report has some strategic omissions. It's not reflecting the high use as a footpath, such that in an areas that we know about standing natural beauty, these are really, and that amenity would be seriously affected. It seems to me that those are the grounds to go on.
Yeah. And the adverse effect on the countryside. Yeah. It doesn't outweigh the countryside and the users of the road, because at the end of the day, I might have got this horribly wrong, but I don't think it is. A statistic will only occur on a public highway if there is a problem, as opposed to a private. So I've known for a fact that accidents have happened in Bolton on the 2-3 private roads we have, but they've never been part of it because they've not ever been reported to by the police, because it's a private road and it becomes a private issue. So, Vice Chairman, have you managed to call together reasons, or do you need a little extra time?
I'm just writing them down now.
Okay. I would say talk amongst yourselves, but don't. But as I said before, on more than one occasion, we get the difficult stuff. It's like either against policy and the difficult applications, and this falls definitely in the difficult applications. And I agree with you, Councillor Kenny. We've been let down yet again. Well, actually, Crawley Down's been let down again by the highways, because they did that with the preschool application and this one particularly. And it will still keep going ahead and ahead and ahead.
I think it's an issue of responsibility between county and district. Hopefully, if we bring them together, we can get more.
Well, you should know, because you've got your Colwell Farm development, and that highway's let you down badly there.
I was speaking from experience, while Councillor Hitchcock is doing his thing, you know, on the B2117, the Cape Road development, the argument was the same. There are no existing traffic. And
So it was, the highways report said there would be no need to change from the national speed limit outside a housing development down to 30 miles an hour. It took me a year and a half for them to change the speed limit outside as a post issue. The time to deal with these issues is at
This
planning,
stage, yeah.
or in their reports rather.
Okay, well, we don't want to, tell the world our thoughts on it. So we'll just wait for my vice chairman to, I take it my vice chairman's going to propose it. Do I have a seconder? Oh, councillor Wood. Thank you. And you can go down to county and explain to them.
Indeed, there is a lot of work to be done on highways.
If there is. Because I know councillor Gibson's gone down there and done it in the past. He's not doing his last will and testament. That's Tolkien's book, that is.
I'm just writing my bets out.
Okay, so.
Okay, yeah.
You propose.
I will propose that this is refused on the basis that, one, the harm to the countryside in the tilted balance will exceed the benefits from development. Two, there will be significant impact on those using the public footpath for leisure purposes. And three, the site is excluded from future development by the Stage 2 Sheila.
Could you just repeat reason 2, please? Before.
There will be significant impact on those using the footpath for leisure purposes, which is the Sussex border path you can put in there, because that's key.
And sorry, the final one?
The final one, the site is excluded from future development by the Stage 2 of the Sheila.
Are you happy with that as a seconder? Okay, I've got a proposer, and I have a seconder.
Could we go out and discuss this, please?
Okay, we're going to, can you cut the Okay. Well, we're back, and for the population who's watching us on YouTube, the reason we have to go out is because we have to get the different acts and sections of our plan, and in this case, we've included a from Crawley down neighbourhood plan as well. So Joe's going to read it out, and final wording will be tidied up by Joe in consultation with myself as chairman and Councillor Hitchcock as the vice chairman, and circulated amongst the group. Committee, should say.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is some rough wording. It comes down to the adverse harm on the impact on the countryside and to the leisure pursuits on the Sussex border. So it would be something like the cumulative effect of the adverse harm to the countryside and adverse effect to the public right-of-way of the Sussex border path and users of it, and the perceived safety of those users would outweigh the benefits, thereby contrary to DP12, DP22 of the district plan and policy CDNP 10F of the neighbourhood plan.
Okay. Are you happy as a seconder? Okay. Now we should go to the vote on what has just been read out. A final wording will be put together by the three of us and circulated. And so can we have up the voting? So green if you agree with the reasons to refuse, red if you don't agree with the reasons to refuse, and yellow you can abstain.
Just clarify that with the green again.
Green is the reason, you support the reasons to refuse. I got 3 people who disappeared, now down to 2, 10, one more. Please tell me it's not me. Oh, no, well, we got it. He's out in the Navy again. That's what it is. Right. Okay, that is a unanimous that it has been refused, and the final wording will be put together and circulated. Thank you. Oh, yeah, no, we're not finished yet. Oh, no, we can't go home yet. We're not finished yet, unfortunately. So, there are no reasons to refuse, but we've got another matter, which is item 9 on the agenda, and it is a tree. TPO, confirming a TPO. Now, you've been given this part of your document. Have you got it? Yeah. We will only need to go into part 2 if you wish to discuss it. If you don't wish to discuss it, we won't go into part 2, but when we come back, if you do, you can't mention it, okay? Right, Joe.
Thank you, Chairman. So confirmation is sought on a new tree preservation order on the land to the rear of 21 and 23 Semley Road, Hassocks. An objection has been received to the order, which requires an assessment against the public assessment equality duty as set out in the Equality Act, and the contents of this objection are detailed in the exempt appendix to the report. So the order relates to 2 oak trees, which are shown, as these dots here, highlighted on my cursor. They are set on the rear boundary line with 26 Friars Oak Close. They are oak trees. As set out in the report, these trees form a visually impressive backdrop to Friars Close, as well as providing biodiversity value. It's considered that these trees have significant public amenity value, and previous works to the tree indicate they are at risk. So we've got a photograph, just so you can see. This is taken from Friars Close, and these are the trees in question, showing the backdrop they provide to that close. As members are aware, the order would not prevent all future work on trees at the site, but it would instead give the council the power to control any proposed works on the trees to ensure that it is done in an appropriate manner. And therefore, it is recommended that the order is confirmed. Thank you.
Do members wish to speak about this? If not,
So I recommend approval, Chairman.
Okay, so nobody wants to speak about this letter, fine. Okay, so recommend approval, so councillor Sweatman and councillor Cherry. Okay, right. It is recommended that the order is confirmed. Green, you agree with the order being confirmed? Yep, the order is confirmed. Thank you. Right, moving on to item 10 is questions pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 10.2. Due notice has been given. I have none. So therefore, I close the meeting at 6:21. Please stay seated in such time